Hello and welcome to Cracking the Cryptic. So today I'm just going to have a look at today's times. This is Tuesday, 22nd January, times number 27254. So I solved this earlier and you can see myself here. I'll stop the clock occasionally and consider some clues. So just before we get going, let's have a look at one across. Law enforcer, repeated phrase on book. I didn't get that immediately. There's a couple of ways into that, I think. Law enforcer does look like the definition as book has a number of cryptic possibilities. So if you can think of a 7-letter law enforcer that happens to have wordplay that fits repeated phrase on book. And it's worth knowing in the Times on almost always means coming after. Although I think in a down clue it can mean coming before because something is physically standing on something else. But in an across clue, on almost always means coming after. So the repeated phrase here comes after the book. And if you can think of a short word for a repeated phrase, that's very useful there. I couldn't. So I had to have a look at some other clues. After one across, I had a look at one down. That was better. Old poet taking sherry, regularly dipping quills. Well, I could only think of one thing for quills, and that was pens. And that fits into Spencer. Sherry regularly is 3 of the letters from sherry taken regularly. Now 9 across, festival, Easter is different primarily. That's fairly straightforward. It's the first letters of Easter is different, making the Muslim festival Eid. And 11 across was a poker hand, so it was quite straightforward to get going, but I got a bit stuck now. 2 down, Queen after tipsy fellow, drinking wine up this flavour. There's quite a lot in that clue. So really what I was doing is focusing on the letters in the grid and seeing if I could come up with a word that would fit there. And I couldn't for a while. What you need to figure out, I think especially, is that tipsy here is an anagram indicator. And once you know that, and therefore it's probably, you need the letters of fellow, fairly unpromising letters, but wine turns out to be red in this case, and the Queen is ER at the end of it all, because she comes after an anagram of fellow, drinking or putting into it red upwards, and that's how you get the answer. 3 down, peninsula. 4 down, vulgar type, instant trouble. I did immediately think of flash, but I was more thinking of a flash flood as an instant trouble, and I couldn't see why that was a vulgar type, even though vulgar could be flash. So I've come up with one across now. It's a riff on She. She is a classic book. And then 2 down there, I'll stop it again. That turned out to be elderflower. I don't know if you worked that out from that anagram of fellow with red in it backwards and then ER. But yes, one across was She followed by riff. Riff was the repeated phrase, and if I was more of a musician, I might have come up with that quicker. And She is a book by Rider Haggard from 100 years ago. That's one of the classics, a 3-letter book, and it's an actual instance of a book rather than B or NT or OT, which are other possibilities for book. Now 3 down, peninsula, where riverboat starts to the north. I'm not sure if I can remember immediately how I got to that. Let's run it. I mean, there is probably only one peninsula that fits neatly into there, and it's Iberia. Starts to the north. Oh, river is Aire, A-I-R-E, the Yorkshire River. 10 across is an anagram. 4, I know flash, but I don't know the rest. 5, a double definition, resist US cash. 6 is a bit harder. In fact, I think I get a bit stuck on 6 down and 5 across. They don't work for me. So 7 down is an egg, and it's also a container turned upwards. So that's knit with tin turned upwards. 8, to support, with that D endorse occurred to me. And a point or goal or aim can be an end, or is or, and points are south and east. Couldn't think of a couple that would go. Let's just have another quick look at that clue. There we go. There we go. So couple ending on floor. Ending on floor is the letter R that we've already got in the grid for this 6-letter word. So we need a couple to go before that R. That drink's stimulating. And all I could think of for a couple was a pair or a duo. But if I'd thought of the right word that could go before an R, a stimulating drink would have come to me. 16, message that's wounding. That's this sitting on the fence. Couldn't think of the 6-4 phrase there. In fact, I got a bit stuck here looking for somewhere to go. Do have a look at these clues as we go through. Pause it and pat yourself on the back if you can get them ahead of me. The can in 18 across is quite important. And I couldn't think of this particular poet in 22 across. 6 down, showing standard plug, a number passed round. There's quite a bit of crosswordese in there. Short word for standard, short word for plug. 14 down. So recycling looks a bit like an anagram indicator here. And the words to, use, all, buy happen to contain 10 letters. So I agree must therefore be the definition. And once you can think of a phrase or word that means I agree using those letters, then you can get absolutely right, as it were. 29, did long study, returning after some time. Well, you have to, as a regular crossworder, you know you can break up did long study. And did long is the definition here. So to yearn is to long, and therefore the past tense is yearned. And that's got a den, returning after a year. So that one was fairly straightforward for me. This is an unusual word. Instrument sort of light, twice recalled, with zeal played. Well, it's slightly awkwardly worded clue, and zeal must be there for a reason. Played can be an anagram indicator. So you need an anagram of zeal, but before that, sort of light, twice recalled. Well, eventually, a 2-letter light. I've got a U there. I eventually thought of UV. But how can you make up a word with 2 lots of UV in an anagram of zeal? Well, if you remember the South African horn from the World Cup, you may remember that its name was Vuvuzela. So eventually I worked that one out, unpromising as those letters were, and that went in. 20 down, a gannet, possibly, going to pot, braised. Well, here, going to pot actually not doing any function other than indicating an anagram of braised, and that's a seabird. 27 across, I couldn't do 21. I wanted it to be Russia, but I couldn't see why that was money, but it would have fitted and been a country. 27 across, part of the word junior, a division of that, gives us the educational establishment that's a university. And 13 down, another anagram. Birch unseen have the helpful 11 letters we need for evidence of torture. That's a Chinese burn. Then 19 across, a great being in Greece where crisis was once reversible. Well, you have to think either of the supreme god in Greece or the Suez crisis. And once you reverse Suez, you get Zeus, which is a fascinating reversal familiar to regular crossworders. So at the moment I'm 4 minutes in, and honestly it hasn't gone quite as fast as I would have hoped with the number of anagrams and sort of fairly straightforward parts of the clues. So now I can see, I think the C helps me spot the possibility of bracer as a stimulating drink, and the couple is a brace, like a brace of pheasants. The message that's wounding, well, you really have to think about the fence more, but once you think of barbed wire, maybe I don't get that immediately actually, but it is barbed wire, and that's a nice little pun. A wire or message that was barbed would be wounding to the recipient in a mental sense. 6 down had par and add in it within the number 1, on parade, which is showing, and 5 across. 5 across was actually quite difficult. That was own in brie, which was the French produce to give brownie as the cake. Still couldn't do 4 down, flash, and now I've got an A. I can't quite see what's going on there. So I have to move on from that. Can't see the country. Eventually, oddly, I mean, all the words which have got letters in, I just can't see where to go from. So I have to start cold solving again, which means solving a word without any letters in the grid, something I resist normally. A bit of fun deputising for poet, maybe I don't. So I eventually worked out that a lark was a bit of fun. Deputising for represents in here, which is quite tough. Larkin, a great poet, in my opinion. Top college official has always impressed. I'll just stop it again. Islander. So you probably need an islander in 4-7 with that E. Having always impressed suggested to me you need to put ever in it. So here was where I was planning to put ever, but I couldn't think of any islander that would fit with ever there. And that's partly because I was looking in the wrong part of the word to fit ever in. So we'll carry on. Yes, I did do some code solving, I think. Although I couldn't actually solve, I tried some code solving. I think eventually I have a look at 18 down, and it's not easy from this L. Animal caught in field hiding in grass. That's actually C in Lee, L-E-A, for a field, and grass is pot, as in the drug. And that gives us the animal is a polecat. That's quite a tough solve. So the carrier of crockery is a tea tray with teat and ray, pea and pear, and 26 across. And now I can see that the islander is a Cape Verdean, and he has ever in this section here, and Cap and Dean around it. So now the money country is Guinea. The can, prisoner wander into ruin, turns out to be powder room. The can is as in a lavatory. The vulgar type, Flash Harry, fits, and now I can see that trouble is part of the wordplay. To harry someone is to trouble them. 17 down, I filled in believer based on one supposes here as the definition. I didn't really understand. It looked like an anagram of live in beer, but I wasn't sure why beer was force. But the definition made me confident enough it must be right. I was slightly on the wrong track. Dre at 24 down finishes off the puzzle, and a fraction over 7 minutes. Not a great time for this puzzle. I think there'll be quicker solvers today than me, and that's fair enough. But there were some oddities there as well. Yes, believer at 17 down, live current in force, one supposes. In fact, I was on the wrong track. It wasn't an anagram of live. Live was B, and then the current was the letter I, the kind of physics abbreviation for electric current, in lever, which was force. If you lever something up or lever it up, you force it. So, interesting puzzle, lots of odd letters in it, Z's and stuff there, and Flash Harry is a bit of a British style phrase, I suppose. Eid is unusual, the Muslim festival where end would have fitted as an answer, and Vuvuzela and Cape Verdean, both African answers. So quite a lot of sort of tough stuff, but fairly straightforward clues, and it really shouldn't have taken me as long as over 7 minutes in some ways. Hope that's helping you with your solving, just explaining what I'm looking for when I get to the clues. And thanks very much for watching. Hope to see you again on Cryptic. Do subscribe. Do feel free to become a patron on Patreon. Look for Cracking the Cryptic on that website. And hope to see you again soon. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.